Creepypastas are a staple of gaming and gaming history, and there have been plenty of popular and memorable ones throughout the years. But which classic gaming creepypasta should you remember or take a look at if you don't? That's what we're exploring today. Let's do it. In a 10 number station. When Fallout 3 first released back in 2008, we were filled with quite a few questions. Will the Queen die on March 19, 2014? Will Britney Spears win an Oscar in 2023? And while these questions may seem random, all signs actually pointed on all fronts. But then, you hear the story of Fallout 3's special radio station. The conspiracy theory site Snopes.com pointed out that a couple of forum posts seemingly showed Fallout 3 predicting the future. Not only the exact date and time of Gary Coleman's death, but the US oil spill that was taking over the news for a few months around the summer of 2010. How did they do this, you ask? Via secret radio transmissions in the game. In-game, the radio station Galaxy News Radio is hosted by a guy called Three Dog. The creepypasta that originated this story follows the protagonist who ends up killing Three Dog. If you do this, he's then replaced on the air by his assistant Margaret. If you then skip past the Galaxy News radio missions and then destroy Raven Rock, GNR will occasionally turn into a numbers station. These moments supposedly feature the voice actor of Three Dog reading out numbers in a sad sounding voice. These are then followed by a string of Morse code. It predicted the Queen dying in 2014, Britney getting an Oscar, but unless the Queen was replaced by an animatronic in 2014, it seems to be entirely fake, which it is. In at 9, NES Godzilla. NES Godzilla's creepypasta is a very long pasta about, well, NES Godzilla. Originally written by Cosby Dapp on Bogleach, this pasta is known for both its length and for its extremely heavy imagery. It is so long, in fact, that I had to be split into sub-pages on the creepypasta wiki. Unlike other video game creepypastas, the main character actually rationalizes the events in the game. Other creepypastas also use the hyper-realistic elements, but this one mainly uses it just 2 times in the entire story, only using the element in the final creepy world. It doesn't use too many cliche elements, really only one in the ending, but even then it's not overused. The story has a captivating plot, great and spooky villains, and other things that enhance the experience of reading it, which is why it's a classic and favorite to many. But due to its length, I can't really provide a proper synopsis, and instead urge you to read it online for yourself if you have the time, which it's the summer, so you do, okay? You're watching this YouTube video, so yeah, you have the time. It's creepy, it's weird, and it will make you thankful for modern gaming in all the best ways. And at 8, Pokemon Black. Releasing before the main series Pokemon title of the same name, Pokemon Black is the story of an odd bootleg game cartridge the author found at a flea market. The game started with the familiar Nidorino and Gengar intro screen, however, the press start screen had been changed. It said Black version under the Pokemon logo. The game started with Professor Oak's speech, and then it quickly became evident that the game was essentially Pokemon Red version. After selecting your starter though, if you looked at your Pokemon, in addition to Bulbasaur, Charmander, or Squirtle, you had another Pokemon called Ghost. The Pokemon was level 1. It had fright of the ghosts they are encountered in Lavender Tower before obtaining the Sylph Scope, and it had one attack, Curse, but not the one you're thinking of. Defending Pokemon were unable to attack Ghost. It would only say that they were too scared to move. And when the move Curse was used in battle, the screen would cut to black. The cry of the defending Pokemon could be heard, but this time it was distorted. And then when everything came back, the defending Pokemon would be gone. If you use this in a battle against a trainer, where the Pokeballs representing their Pokemon would appear in the corner, they would actually have one fewer Pokeball. The implication being that the Pokemon was killed, and it only gets darker from there, okay? There are no Reshurams in this Pokemon creepypasta, so if you want the whole thing, go read it for yourself, because again, it's kind of a longer one. And at 7, the Tails doll. The Tails doll is the titular main antagonist of various creepypasta stories of the same name, as well as the urban legend that is also the Tails doll. It is a demonic doll designed in the form of Miles Tails Prower from the Sonic series, who seeks to defeat him. However, in the creepypasta stories, he's nothing more than a homicidal maniac who seeks to kill anyone who performs the Tails doll curse. I meant to say performs, but I don't care at this point. There is no definitive history to the Tails doll creepypasta, the most popular one being the Tails doll curse created by Rebecca G. A man came home from work with a gift for his son. He had picked up a new video game for him called Sonic R. It was a racing game, and when he gave it to his son as the gift, he was so excited to get it and actually to play it right away. Well, the son was, not the dad. That night though, he played the game with his son and they had a great time. A couple of days later, the boy was almost finished with the game, but he was told that it was time for bed. At around 2 a.m. though, father woke up and heard thumps on his door. He assumed it was his son getting up and asking him for something, so he told the boy to go back to bed. The thumping kept happening though, and eventually he saw Tails popping his head up constantly, every time. He got out of bed and slowly opened the door, and then he heard someone say, say very softly, "You are coming with me forever." And it was actually the doll. An evil, blood-covered, possessed little doll. Yeah, and it was the doll from Sonic R. It had to be. Of course it was going to be. Come on, we know how these work. And at 6, Super Mario 666. The writer of this story says that recently a home in their neighborhood had mysteriously been destroyed. The newspaper says that it was an explosion started from a gas leak in the house, but who's to say? Unfortunately, no one in the home survived, but one day a friend came to his house rushing over, saying that he had found something important. His friend was nearly out of breath from sprinting all the way to his house, but he had found something in the rubble of the home. It was a copy of Super Mario 64. Why you were going around in the rubble of a exploded house beats me, but you know, creepypasta. Although the numbers on the cartridge weren't 64, instead it was 666. They immediately put the game in and started playing, and the boys were greeted with a sign-in post that read, "King Babam is dead. Now his legion of followers are lost without purpose. They can only do what they know best." That's when they began to hear this ticking noise, and no, not a mysterious one. As a Babam walked onto the screen, its eyes were red and it was staring directly at the two boys. The sound began to pick up speed. Tick, 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 tick. That's when they realized that the game was responsible for that mysterious explosion. They sprinted out of the house only for moments later to have history repeat itself, and now his home had as well erupted into flames. Firefighters sorted through the rubble, but the only thing they found was a still intact Super Mario 666. Halfway through into number 5, Lavender Town Syndrome. The Lavender Town Syndrome was a peak in suicides and the illness of children between the ages of 7 to 12 shortly after the release of Pokemon Red and Green in Japan, back on February 27th in 1996. Rumors say that these suicides and illnesses only occurred after the children playing the game reached Lavender Town, whose theme music had extremely high frequencies that studies showed that only children and young teens could hear, since their ears are more sensitive. Due to the lavender tone though, at least 200 people supposedly committed suicide, and many more had developed illnesses and afflictions. The people who committed suicide usually did so by hanging or jumping from heights, but those who did not act irrationally complained of severe headaches after listening to the theme. Although Lavender Town now sounds differently depending on the game, this mass hysteria was caused by the first Pokemon game released, or so it's said. After the Lavender Town incident, the programmers had to fix Lavender Town's theme music to be at a lower frequency, and children were no longer affected by it. Although, of course, it's a creepypasta, this never happened, so yeah. And at 4, Polybius. This story tells of an unheard new arcade game appearing in several suburbs in Portland, Oregon in 1981. This would have been something of a rarity at the time, and the game is described as proving popular to the point of addiction, with lines forming around the machines often resulting in fights over who would play next. I mean, if you're in a line, I don't know why you're fighting over who gets to play next, but that's aside the point. The legend describes how the machines were visited by men in black who collected unknown data from the machines, allegedly testing responses to the game's psychoactive effects. Players supposedly suffered from a series of unpleasant side effects including seizures, amnesia, insomnia, night terrors, and hallucinations after playing the game, and approximately 1 month after its supposed release in 1981, Polybius is said to have disappeared without a trace. So good luck finding one, because you can't, because it disappeared without a trace. And it's not real. And at 3, Ben Drowned. I recently moved into my dorm room starting as a sophomore in college, and a friend of mine gave me his old Nintendo 64 to play. I was stoked, to say the least. I could finally play all those old games of my youth that I hadn't touched in the last decade. His Nintendo 64 came with one yellow controller and a rather shoddy copy of Super Smash Bros. And while beggars can't be choosers, I was definitely over it. That weekend I decided to drive around a few neighborhoods about 20 minutes or so off campus, hitting up local garage sales, hoping to score on some good deals from ignorant parents. Before I left though, one last house caught my attention. I still have no idea why it did. I mean, there were no cars and there was only one table set up with random junk on it, but something sort of drew me there. I asked this man if he sold any video games, and he assured me that he'd be back in a jiffy, and then turned to head back into the garage. I looked around for a little while, and then I looked up and the old man was suddenly there again, arm's length from me, smiling. I'll admit I jumped out of reflex and laughed nervously as he handed me a old Nintendo 64 cartridge. It was the standard gray color, except that someone had written Majora on it in black permanent marker. He then gave it to me for free, and there was only one save file simply named Ben. I felt bad for the man who was obviously a grandparent and going through a loss, but this story is way more sinister than that, and if you want to know more, you'll have to read it for yourself if you don't know it already, because again, it's long as hell. But ultimately in at number 2, Herobrine. It's Herobrine. You know what this is, okay? I'd recently spawned in a new world in single-player Minecraft. Everything was normal at first as I began chopping down trees and crafting a workbench. I noticed something move amongst the dense fog. I thought it was a cow, so I pursued it, hoping to grab some hides for armor, but it wasn't a cow. Looking back at me was another character with the default skin, but his eyes were empty. I saw no name pop up, and I double-checked to make sure I wasn't in multiplayer mode. He looked at me and then quickly ran into the fog. I continued on with the game as I expanded the world, and I saw things that seemed out of place for the random map generation to make. 2x2 tunnels, small perfect pyramids made of sand in the ocean, and grooves of trees with all of their leaves removed. I would constantly think that I saw the other player in the fog, but whenever I looked in that direction, he wouldn't be there. I saved the map and went on the forums to ask if anyone had found this mysterious player. I received a PM from the username Herobrine containing one word: stop. About a month had passed until I heard from someone again, and it was revealed to be the brother of Notch, the game's developer. I personally emailed Notch and asked him if he had a brother, and his only response was I did, but he's no longer with us. Finally, in at number 1, Sonic.exe. The original Sonic.exe story centers around Tom, a young man who was a big fan of Sonic the Hedgehog, especially the older games. He claimed that he had not played any glitchy or hacked games before, though he admitted that he didn't want to after an experience he had. He then proceeded to recount this experience, explaining how he received a CD and an accompanying letter from his friend Kyle, begging him to destroy the disc before it was too late and to not play the game, but ignoring his friend's warnings, obviously, otherwise they wouldn't have a story. Tom played the game and began to encounter odd, somewhat disturbing phenomena, from a title card featuring an evil-looking Sonic with bloody eyes and glowing pupils with a wide smile, to the presence of a file select screen similar to that of Sonic the Hedgehog 3. As he picked the only available character Tails and began the first stage, titled Hill Act 1, Tom continued to find more evidence that there was something wrong with the game, namely copious amounts of dead animals, which yeah, not normal in a Sonic game. They were all murdered in gruesome ways, and eventually he encountered Sonic at the end of the level, standing completely still and with his eyes closed. And I'm sure you can see where this is going. Fun fact, we actually played the game version of this on the channel way back in 2019, and I actually filmed a segment for that video, which would have been my first video on this channel, but I didn't react well to the game. I mean, I wasn't really all that scared and basically got the same ending as everyone else, so I wasn't included in the final cut. Well, joke's on you, because I came back and I took over the channel. Whoa! That's all the time we have for today, friends. Thank you all so much for watching. I have been in Shower Mate Connor Monroe, and I'll see you in another video. I'm sorry it's not FNAF. Get over it.